Good morning, everybody. Hope you're having a lovely morning. What a gorgeous day today is. Yesterday wasn't so gorgeous. It was rainy, it was cloudy, but believe it or not, we put up a temporary tent for now. Since we started outdoor services in May, it hasn't rained once on Shabbos. But unfortunately, this week it did rain, so we put up a tent and we still had services in a safe manner. I wanted to speak to you about something very fascinating in this week's Torah portion. Okay, this week's Torah portion is Ki Tavo, when you come to the land of Israel. And one of the laws, the second law it gives us, is called Vidui Meiser, which means the confession of tithing. Now the rule is, as I told you before, that the Torah obliges every Jew to give many different types of charity, to the priest, to the Levite, to the orphan, to the mourner, to the poor, etc., etc. And the rule was that on the third and sixth year, what happened was you would take all the tithing that you had and you would come to Jerusalem. You'd make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem right before Passover, and you would bring it to the priest. And when you brought it to the priest, the Torah commanded that you make a certain prayer. And the prayer was, I took out all the tithing from my house, I gave it to the priest, to the Levite, to the orphan, to the widow, to the poor, and you say, I did everything you told me, I didn't eat when I wasn't supposed to, I tithed, did exactly what you said and how you said, God. Words in Hebrew, probably read it to you, I didn't do anything wrong. And you basically say, I did everything you wanted, God, you give it to the priest. The question, of course, is, what kind of business is this? Why do we have to verbally get up there and say, I did everything you told me, exactly the way you wanted? And why is it called a confession? Is that a confession? Imagine if a woman's sitting in her house and the husband comes in and says, I have a confession to make to you. And she perks up, yeah, and what's your confession? He says, my confession is that I'm great, I'm smart, I did everything right, I take care of my family, etc., etc., etc. She would look at him, get out of here. That's not a confession. That's saying, I did everything the way I was supposed to. Why would the Torah oblige us to make a confession to say we did things right and we did the good things? And we have to just say it verbally. I mean, if Jews knew that that's what confession was, then we would be lining around the corner there. And we wouldn't leave it for the Catholics. They say the old joke about this guy, it's before Yom Kippur, and he hasn't been in temple in a year, and he's embarrassed, he's uncomfortable. How's he going to show up in temple? He hasn't been there in a year. Yet he wants to confess. At the end of the day, he wants to come to shul and pray to God. So he comes up with an idea. He says, look, it's all one God. There's a church right across the street from him. He dresses up like a nice good Catholic. And, on the day of Yom Kippur, he comes in to the confession booth. He knocks on the confession booth. He comes in and he starts telling the priest all the stuff. And the priest says to him, sir, are you Jewish? And he says, yes, but how do you know? I look like any good Catholic. And the priest looks at him and the priest says, listen, you're the first guy in all my years that came in to the confession booth with his lawyer. So the point is like this. All right, why would we call it a confession? Yom Kippur is coming soon. We make a lot of confessions on Yom Kippur. We say, Hashem knew I have stolen, but God knew I have sinned. Gazal knew, Hashem knew I have sinned, and but God knew I have let forth what I need to. Gazal knew I have stolen, etc., etc. That makes sense. But to say, I'm making a confession and then say how great I am? What's going on here? And the answer is a very beautiful one and a very simple one. And the Rebbe gives it to us in one of his talks. The Rebbe says, thousands of years before we came up with narrative therapy, etc., etc., the Torah was telling us something very important. That if a person is not going to recognize his value and the good things that he did and the good things that he's capable of, then he'll actually never make a confession for the bad things. Because if you think you're a dirty rag, if you think you're worthless, if you think you can't do anything right, then you won't care about your mistakes. You won't feel bad about them. You won't truly confess. And when the Torah is telling us, yes, there comes a time that you need to get up there and you need to say, I am a good person. I do things right. Not in an arrogant and pompous way, not in a silly way, but in a real way. The Torah tells us in this week's Torah portion, it gives us an obligation that the Jew gets up there and he says, listen, I did exactly how you told me to tithe. I did the right thing. I have value. I am good inherently. You know, if your wife comes to you, you come home and your wife says, I can't believe you made this mistake and this mistake. And you say, you know what, I'm always wrong. I'm never right. You're correct. I'm a terrible guy. You know what she would say? She would be upset. It would be meaningless. Because anyone that says I'm always wrong, he means I'm always right. And anyone says I'm never right, they think they're really always right. But that's not what the Torah wants from us. The Torah wants us to recognize that we can make mistakes. To recognize that we're imperfect. To recognize that we need to get better. To recognize that we need to overcome our challenges. Yet at the same token, and in the same way, we need to understand and recognize and appreciate and validate and cherish our good, our soul, our positivity, the kindness we do. And that's why the Torah says in this week's Torah portion, it's not enough to bring the tithing to the temple and give it to the Kohen, but you have to verbally get up there and say, I did the right thing. I followed through in every detail of what God commanded me. In education, it's such an important thing. Think about it. Your kid comes home with a report card. And the report card says that on math they got a B minus, and you want to knock them over the head. You a B minus on math? But 1 second. Imagine if instead of saying that, you looked at science and at language, at their A's, and say, wow, look at your talent, look at your potential, look at your strength. You're able to get an A plus in these things that you put your head to. Imagine how much greater you could rise. What have you done? You've given your child self-worth. You've made them feel confident. You've made them feel the power that they have within them to do the right thing. It's not all good, but it's recognizing the power of the human being. Think about all the challenges, all the depression we have. If they only understood their self-value, if they only once in a while thought about all the good they have. So, is America great or not? There's a debate in our country raging. We just had the DNC and we just had the RNC. One person tells us the country's beautiful, it's gorgeous, everything's perfect. The other one says, we're going down the worst road, it's terrible, there's nothing here. What are we doing? We need total change. But the answer is really somewhere in the middle. If we really say that we're terrible, first of all, it's not true, because we have so many good, beautiful things about our country, about our people. But it's a more important thing. If we're terrible, then why the need to fix it up? If we're good, but we have a lot of challenges, then it allows us to become better. It allows us to want to have the motivation, to have the willpower, to have the strength to say, aha, I need to become better. Look at my potential. And this is one of the greatest things of the Baal Shem Tov and Alter Rebbe, the founder of the Hasidic movement, who next Sunday we celebrate his birth of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov took a different approach than Musar. Musar was, you have to talk and tell the guy how about their mistakes and how low their body is and how they're nothing and how they have to be fearful and in awe of God, etc., etc. Chassidus said, no. You know what you have to do? You have to tell the person that they are a part of God and they are so powerful and their limit is the sky and they have so much value. And when you tell them that, and you say, how could someone with so much value, with so much potential, with so much love, with so much soul, how could they do something so silly? That's the way to refrain. Not by looking down at yourself, not by seeing yourself as negative, seeing your potential, seeing your value. And that's the message in the mitzvah of Vidui Meiser. God says, Chevre, you got to make a verbal confession. You say, why is it a confession? You know why it's a confession? Because confession doesn't only mean to say I sinned. Confession means to get up there and be able to say, I am a good person. And only then can you recognize your sin and become a better person. It's the month of Elul. It's no better time than now to look at ourselves. And once in a while, get up and say, you know what? I have value. I have good things. I do good things. And now I'm going to fix those mistakes, those imperfections. May God give us all a good, a sweet New Year and inscribe us in the book of life. Have a great day.